Right now, the bloodbath is taking place in northern Gaza, where Israel aims to create a buffer zone as part of its genocidal ethnic cleansing plans. So first, when Israel went into Gaza after October 7th, it dumped leaflets over Gaza City, everywhere from Jabalia to Gaza City, the northern part of the strip, instructing everyone to go south. But not everyone went south because they understand that they are part of a continuous Nakba, a plan to ethnically cleanse them, push them off their land. And so they stayed. And you also want to just stay where your home is. So hundreds of thousands of people actually stayed in northern Gaza. And now Israel is punishing them for staying and attempting to push them out. That's why Al-Shifa Hospital in Gaza City came under attack, because it was the main institution and source of life and center of sanctuary for people who were injured, wounded, or displaced. So you remove that, then they have to go south towards Rafah. And then once, the final solution comes into play, that population in the south will be pushed into the Sinai Desert, which is why Egypt has built a giant wall. It's a separate story. We need to keep the focus on the north. That population in the north is now cut off from the center. Deir al-Balah, being the largest population area in the center of Gaza, is cut off from northern Gaza by the Israeli military. So they have nowhere to run, nowhere to escape. And now Israel's trying to cut off their food supply in order to simply starve them out. It's gotten to the point where Thomas Friedman, one of the biggest Israeli apologists at the New York Times, has said explicitly that it appears that Israel is trying to reduce the number of Palestinians in the Gaza Strip so that it can control them more easily, which sounds like the definition of genocide. So that's what we're witnessing. And the United States is doing, well, what are they doing? We're talking about aid drops now? I mean, are you kidding me?
Yeah. And the aid drops, the fact that they're talking about aid drops is an acknowledgement that Israel is blocking the aid from getting in, or else why would you have to drop the aid from the sky? So they know exactly what their partner Israel is doing, which they're allowing to do. They're not allowing actually Israel, they're supporting Israel in doing it. And now they want to throw in another performance, another PR stunt, literally a stunt, dropping aid from the sky to cover up for their complicity, just as they tried to send aids to Michigan to try to plead with their American voters that care about Palestinian lives while supplying the weapons and the diplomatic cover for the mass murder.
Let's just interrogate the insanity of this, of the U.S. sending aid drops into Gaza. Okay, the U.S. is sending the weapons that are killing, is sending Israel the weapons that are killing everyone in Gaza. It's not sending them the weapons, though. It is licensing sales of tank shells to Israel by the tens and tens of thousands every few weeks without congressional approval. It's actually violating international law for these licensing agreements to make sure that Israel can slaughter the people who are trying to get a bag of flour, along with the GBU bunker buster bombs that it's making sure Israel has replenished every few weeks as well. The U.S. has created an unprecedented air bridge for military aid to Israel to create this catastrophe. Everybody watching this knows that. So what is it going to do? It's going to drop a few packages like the King of Jordan, King Abdullah, did in a photo op, which land in the sea, and small children, like, adolescent boys, have to go swim out and get whatever they can, as if that's going to satiate the hunger of a population where 576,000 people are on the verge of famine, according to the United Nations. The United States has leverage over Israel more than it has over the United States. Like, Biden is going to war with Republican governors over immigration, and he can't control what's happening in Texas and Florida. He could control Israel much more easily. There's no country in the world where the U.S. has more leverage than over Israel. And so what the U.S. is doing by dropping a piddling amount of aid into the sea off Gaza is demonstrating how weak it is in the face of a crappy little apartheid state 5,000 miles away with a population of around 6 million people. As Bill Clinton said, who's the effing superpower here? And it's not Joe Biden. This is one of the biggest displays of American weakness, and it's totally discrediting to the rules-based order, because the U.S. knows that the U.S. is allowing this famine to continue when it is the lone vote on the UN Security Council preventing a ceasefire. It's also allowing the hostages to die. The Al-Qassam brigades just released video from the Gaza Strip of 7 older male hostages who have been killed in Israeli airstrikes. This is after the Israeli military acknowledged killing 10 other hostages. So the U.S. is allowing these hostages to be killed by blocking a ceasefire. And its solution is to airdrop aid. Do you think anyone's going to buy that? Tony Blinken referred to, this is amazing. He referred to, and this just shows you where his mind is at. When he's announcing these pathetic, hypocritical aid drops, he referred to Gaza as Ukraine. Because he can't imagine actually helping anyone in Gaza anyway.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. At the White House, John Kirby, the White House spokesperson, was just asked about why the U.S. continues to back Israel even as people are starving in Gaza.
Is because Israel is starving people. So why are we still so supportive of Israel when it is the one that is creating the problem that the United States now has to try to ameliorate?
Israel itself has tried to help with the delivery of humanitarian assistance. As I said, they tried airdrops themselves just a week or so ago on their own accord.
What?
People still starving.
It's a war zone, and there's nowhere else for them to go. It's not like in some other conflicts where they can easily flee. And
so he's acknowledging the people of Gaza are trapped with nowhere to go. And then he pretends as if Israel's trying to help them, even though Israel's the one caging them, preventing them from fleeing and blocking the aid from getting in.
John Kirby, by the way, just got a promotion, and he's been upgraded. His team has been expanded. He's an influential member of the Biden administration, but he's not really a member of the U.S. government. He's sort of become Israel's English language spokesman. Because, I mean, if you look at like who you never hear from Israelis in U.S. TV. If you did, it would just their support would dwindle even further, because you just have these genocidal zombies who are like, we must kill the human animals. There are no uninvolved in Gaza. They can go to Jordania. But then John Kirby comes in. He's like Ron Burgundy, but in a better suit. He's as slick a crisis communicator as the Biden administration can conjure up, and he's constantly making the point that Israel cares about civilian lives in Gaza, that they're trying to reduce the death toll, that they're altruistic, that they're sending aid. And I don't even hear that message from other figures in the Biden administration. Even at the State Department, there's like some smarmy level of discomfort that you can detect with them. Oh, we every life lost is one life too many, they'll say. John Kirby doesn't even pull that.
And what this comes right after Lloyd Austin just disclosed, and I've never seen a U.S. official disclose this before, unless I missed something. He just disclosed for the first time that, according to U.S. figures, Israel has killed over 25,000 women and children. He was asked by Rokana about this by Rokana.
Mr. Secretary, about how many Palestinian women and children have been killed by Israel since October 7th?
It's over 25,000.
Mr. Secretary, last week, the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights warned that any transfer of weapon or ammunition to Israel violates international law. About how many precision-guided munitions has the United States given Israel since the beginning of the war?
I don't have that number at my fingertips, but we have endeavored.
Mr. Secretary, it's about 21,000 precision-guided munitions to Israel since the start of the war. Secretary Austin, last week you spoke to Defense Minister Gallant, and you said clearly there needs to be a plan to ensure the safety and support of those sheltering in Rafah before any military operations proceed. National Security Advisor Sullivan has said he has not seen any plan yet. John Kirby said it would be a disaster to invade Rafah. If Netanyahu defies the United States and invades Rafah, will you commit today that you will halt any future military sales to Israel?
Obviously, sir, that's a presidential decision, but we expect that. And by the way, I spoke to Minister Gallant last night, and I expect that when we provide munitions to allies and partners, that they'll use them in a responsible way.
Yeah. Yeah. How's that going? How's that responsible way going for you? But that figure he disclosed at the beginning, I haven't heard that before from U.S. official, 25,000 women and children, which means that the official toll.
No, just civilians, like, non-involved in conflict.
Yeah.
Which is a made up.
Yeah. But which means the official toll of around 30,000 is far too low, because he's saying by the Pentagon's count, it's 25,000 women and children alone. And of course, I'm sure it's far higher than that. But even again, the premise that Ro kind of accepts there, that Israel shouldn't invade Rafah without a plan to protect civilians. There should be no invasion, period, no matter what plan Israel claims that it comes up with. Israel has no right to launch any operation inside of Gaza. So while I appreciate the questioning there, he shouldn't accept the premise that Israel has the right to invade Rafah if they can come up with some sort of plan to safely evacuate people.
I mean,
that's ethnic cleansing.
In my opinion, Israel has the right to go to hell.
Yeah.
And, if I were
generous.
president, U.S. tanks would be rolling up Rashid Street towards those Israeli tanks. I'd turn the USS Eisenhower around on Tel Aviv after what they did. But that's not the world we're living in. There's going to be no actual civilian protection for Palestinians here. What we're going to get, though, is the very same people who are supplying the weapons, the tools of genocide, like Lloyd Austin, who is on Raytheon's board, and Raytheon has enormous amounts of skin in the game here, including in the Iron Dome battery. They're going to be just inadvertently exposing the lies that Israel tells. And they have told us that they have killed over 10,000 Hamas operatives in Gaza. And Lloyd Austin just put the lie to that. If the official totals 30,000 and 25,000 civilians are dead, and they're just making it up, the 5,000, I mean, where do they get that from? It's a whole lot less than Israel claims. And this relates directly to Rafah. Israel has not substantially reduced the capacity of the Al-Qassam brigades and Soraya al-Quds, the armed wing of Palestinian Islamic Jihad, to fight back. They've shifted their strategy from like larger scale attacks to operating in small cellular teams where they're not actually trying to prevent Israel from moving forward or taking territory. They're simply trying to take as many bodies and destroy as much armor as they can. And that continues. According to U.S. intelligence estimates, there are still 5,000 Al-Qassam fighters operating in northern Gaza alone. So you look at the Israeli military, heavily composed of reservists. This isn't including Yamam, the special forces. These guys are clowns. I mean, you can see them day after day promoting and broadcasting not only their war crimes, but their unusual and obsessive, perverse, demented interest in the women's underwear they find in the homes of people they kill. This is not a professional army. It's like a kind of terror militia of people who are taking time away from their jobs inside Israel to attack a mostly helpless civilian population. They continue to die every week, demoralizing Israel. And they're going to send them into Rafah, where there are, let's say, at least 10,000, maybe 15,000 hardened militants. It's going to be a disaster. It's going to be a complete disaster for Israel. It's going to be a disaster for the civilian population. And the United States is doing nothing of substance that I see to stop it, but it will be a disaster for them on the world stage as well. And Netanyahu is sort of putting the countdown clock at Ramadan. One more point about that. Hamas is moving to sort of expand the conflict on Ramadan, and they are calling on people to come to Al-Aqsa and to observe the holiday, but to show up and vent their anger. Itamar Ben-Gvir, the security minister and total fanatic in the Israeli government, is calling on Israeli security forces to limit the number of worshipers at Al-Aqsa. But the rest of the war cabinet is not going along with him. They just want to increase the security presence. So this is an important date to watch coming up. And I think it's why it might have influenced Biden's ice cream cone licking comments about a ceasefire by Monday. I know the U.S. would like to have this wrapped up by then, but they're just not willing to impose any accountability or take anything away from Israel. So don't expect one. So yeah, Ramadan is due to begin on, I don't observe, so correct me if I'm wrong. It's due to begin on March 10th. Today is the 1st of March. It's the first of the month.
Yeah, you're right.
So the countdown clock is on. But back to my point, I do not think Israel will achieve any objective in Rafah other than mass slaughter, which is one of its objectives, but it's not the real objective. Is eradicating Hamas, releasing the hostages. They're not going to do either. And the U.S. knows it. So why do they keep saying they need to put forward a plan? They're saying they're going to do it in 10 days and they haven't put forward a plan. Isn't it time you kind of put your foot on the brakes? No.
And before we move on, just let's look at how this massacre was covered, the Flower Massacre. This is the Washington Post. Chaotic aid delivery turns deadly as Israeli Gazan officials trade blame. Yeah, you know, massacres happen to be deadly and chaotic. So, you know, it's not surprised that it turned that way because that's just what a massacre is. It's chaotic and deadly. But of course, they can't call it a massacre. It's everything is passive. You know, there's no assigning of responsibility for who actually carried out the massacre. And this is the same. This is from the New York Times. This is just like unbelievable. As hungry Gazans crowd an aid convoy, a crush of bodies, Israeli gunshots, and a deadly toll. It's like a poem or like a free association poem. Just like throw out a bunch of words that you think of in this scene. But again, with the key guidance of do not assign culpability to Israel, which carried out the massacre.
Yeah. Imagine how many revisions those headlines had to go through. And then the worst part is as Israeli and Gazan officials trade blame. Okay, so there's no Palestine, first of all. You're not allowed to say Palestine if you're a U.S. lawmaker or an editor at Legacy Media. And as long as Israeli officials point blame somewhere else, then it becomes a he said, she said scenario. This whole thing should have been over. You know, it could have been over. A ceasefire could have been imposed by the Biden administration after the Al-Ahli Baptist Hospital massacre, which left hundreds dead. But Israel traded blame with Gaza officials. Remember, they blamed a Palestinian Islamic Jihad rocket misfire as if one of those rockets is capable of killing that many people.
Yeah.
And the mainstream press accepted it. And Biden explicitly accepted the Israeli rationale, and the slaughter continued. That was what, like 25,000 deaths ago? So
yeah. I wonder how much Ivy League tuition went into this New York Times headline right here. You know,